Yeah, I would say that, when we watch Harry Potter or, John Wick or any number of these movies where the heroes are in this sort of secondary world off of the Muggle world, um, that we're actually seeing a picture of what Freemasons think of themselves, the way they see themselves. So, I would say that, okay, I think there's a tendency to see the Freemasons as like this mafia at the corner of society, but I don't think you see it that way exactly. But I think that practically, if you're not a Freemason or something, you're just an NPC, and that's the way they see it. Um, which isn't too far from the truth, honestly, because how many people can digest even some of the basic truths that like you tell on in your talks. So it's really no surprise to me that Freemasons and Rosicrucians are coming and listening to you because you know yeah, to some extent it's like if you, if you don't know certain things, you are kind of an NPC. And so everyone's getting more spiritual and whatnot, but how many people fall for you know oh, we're all one consciousness, or love and light, and all of these. Okay, there's truth to a lot of things, but how many people fall prey to these really basic understandings of things? And you know um it just how many people are just loving Manly P. Hall right now? How many people are stuck on the raw material or the Lost Book of NP? And it's not wrong. It's not wrong to get stuck on it. It's not a death sentence, but for my opinion about someone. But I think there's a really obvious pattern that tells you who is with it and who is not. So
All second stage pilots on deck.
this is where I find Freemasonry to be kind of beautiful in a way. Just in some parts, is that you don't have to hand it to them. They really have such a complicated thing where it's you can just look at someone and be like, oh yeah, that's a Mason. You can do a little hand gesture, but if someone has a kid and their kid is in a Peg Prego cart, that's already a big sign. Like, there's certain brands that Freemasons will use because they're just better. They're like NPC nobodies will go to college and get brainwashed and everything else. I went to community college, and a lot of the professors were Freemasons, and the students seemed to be like knowing what they were talking about. And the thing is, if you go through the community college, you can get a job in the community. It's a very direct, Masonic hookup. And they tried to groom me at college, community college. So, you know, they have so many systems. They're so multi-layered and so elaborate. And at the same time, all of it's the same thing. All of it's recognizable. You know, so I think it's incredibly clever, and it's also incredibly secure in the sense of if someone's not in it for a long time, they're not going to see it. They're just, or if they are in it for a long time, they're going to see almost everything. You know what I mean? So this is now I'm getting into, with that last statement, I'm getting into what the spirits have told me about it, but I think that it's one of those things that life makes a lot more sense if you understand this. And then that goes into my whole Mark of the Beast thing. If a large portion of the people who are controlling things, loans, companies, whatever, are Freemasons, then it's like, well, that's why I can't get a job, I mean, not me, I can't get a job because I'm in a weird position. But, if everything was totally quote-unquote fair, I probably could get a job, So, no, here it's not, doesn't have much to do with masonry. Actually, masonry would probably help me get a job here because, you know, I am in the know, and sometimes these guys can just get a feel for it, you know. In my case, I think my uncle just told all kinds of people what I'm up to, and that I'm, you know, who I am, and people in the community knew. So I feel like I was talked about behind closed doors in two or three different lodges. So yeah.
Their frigate has been destroyed.
I mean, of course, you're in the know about this, and you know, if you take it to be at least probably true that most police officers are Freemasons, most military like officers are Freemasons, most what else? You know, I think most bankers are, like even bank tellers, that a lot of these people are Freemasons. And the law in U.S. is super draconian. So, you know, well, if all the people in meaningful institutions, education, a lot of people in education are Freemasons. Well, if all of these people, you know, are in on it, basically, then it makes sense why, you know, if you're just a regular person, you just living your life, you can. I know people who have felonies and they're just living their life, you know. Like one dude and some friends went and were exploring their old alma mater, you know, their old high school, and yeah, the cops came and arrested them for trespassing, and yeah, they got felonies for that. Um, so, but if you're a Freemason, you can just rub your ass on the world, and no one, you know, a lot of people are just gonna turn a blind eye, basically. So, and then there's like me. I went through the GATE program, and people had high expectations of me, but when I didn't meet up to them, I didn't meet the high expectations. There really wasn't like a reaction to that. So, I, yeah. Who knows? Maybe they were like using magic and spells to keep me from going to college. Even I was never gonna go to college though. It made no sense, and my parents didn't help me at all. Like real big boy college, basically. Like for you, for my ex, for other people, a lot of times it makes sense, or you know, they actually had help doing things. They had scholarships, etc. For me, I had no help. I didn't really know anything. Like if I knew what I know now, then I would have definitely tried to get into a college called Purdue Fort Wayne, because it's easy to get into and it's really cheap. It's like $40,000 a year, I think, and then you could probably reduce it with scholarships. I think it was less than that actually. So let's see, 40,000, 4 years. That's still like. I think it was less. I think it was less than 40,000 a year. You know, I think what got me too is that okay, everything you have to pay for. So the tuition's extortionate, but you're not only paying for classes of something that you probably could have read in the book. Then on top of that, you have to pay about $1,000 a year for the books themselves, which are not necessarily better than books you can just get at Barnes and Noble, or as free online PDFs. And then, what else? And then room and board you also have to pay for a lot of the time. And, you know, I knew families that the dad, like, stopped coming to church and serving at church and was working a second job because he had to put his kids through college. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, are they doing something? Are they like, you know, do they have a job that's better than someone else's? All for the college experience. Because that's the thing is, you know, Like, some people went to college to learn. It sounds like you went to college to learn, you know? A lot of people go for the college experience. What the fuck does that even mean? But you have to go through the college experience so you can be, like, a real person. Like, to some extent, I get it, because if you don't go to college, you're just thrust out into the world to figure it out. And so, college at least lends some buffer between adulthood and childhood and adulthood. And it's like, yeah, between adulthood and childhood. Not a good one, but it's something. You at least are living on your own and figuring out who you are as a person. But, you know, there's not really that much of you learning about bills and things like that, things that are, you know, problems. I guess maybe actually, now that I'm saying it, now I can kind of see the value, because I had to, like, very slowly figure out who I am while working. But I think also it's like I didn't become an unrealistic version of myself that is not sustainable and then have to ramp it back later. I'm actually ramping it forward as I go. So, you know, that's another thing, is college is like this little window of freedom of, like, see who you could be if society wasn't this draconian nonsense. And it's like, oh, but reality, bills, go get a career, work yourself to death. When in college, a lot of people work very hard in college. So, yeah. Anyways, it's a big tangent, but no, I think now, understanding the secret society stuff, I finally get that what college is supposed to do,
Well done, gentlemen.
what the point of it is, and, you know, basically I was right on the money. It's a brainwashing factory. It's an indoctrination, you know, it's a concentrated indoctrination system. And so I didn't want to go, and my parents were like, oh, you can go to Christian college. Oh, let's just slap the name Christian on the you know, carnivorous machine, and it's better, right? I don't know. If anything, I just found it was an even more concentrated, you know, scenario of delusion. So I didn't even want to do that, which really upset my parents. And I think my parents often made illusions that I would turn out like my uncle. But I think the funny thing is, by constantly bringing it up, I actually did become like my uncle. Not to spite them. It's just they made a situation for me that was so unbearable that you know, like my uncle, I drifted away and just didn't really come back. And don't have a lot of respect for, like, Christian values. And if anything, I'm way worse than my uncle, right? I'm like over here doing Galicia, talking to demons, and you know, I'm not even interested in Christianity. My criticisms of Christianity, like, we don't talk about religion because, you know, I'm gonna skewer them up. And me and my dad, since I got out and was doing my thing, me and my dad talked about religion once, and I skewered him. So we don't talk about it anymore, because he just has no answers for the things that I bring up. And I bring it up and I do this on the internet too. This is why I'm such a nasty person on the internet. This is why at some point people just stop trying to talk to me. Like, you know, I'm talking to my dad in this situation, I'm talking to the views he actually has. I'm talking to the principles he holds dear in the way that he holds them dear, and picking them apart at the level that he actually grapples with them in his own consciousness. I'm not saying, like, oh, you know, I got in with X or Y in crowd, and now, you know, I'm gonna feed back to you their perception of what you are, and show you a different perspective. No, I'm going into the native perspective and launching a massive attack. And that's what I do in comment sections, or used to do. Now I don't even care, you know. But, you know, because once you have the power to do that to someone, it's just like, okay, I can do this when I like. But, you know, and then after I had this fight with my dad, I just did the same fight with tons of Christians that would come into my comments, because I went on a big tirade against Protestantism over a few months, over like 3-4 months. I was quite prolific in attacking Christianity. which is an attack on Freemasonry too. So like several Freemasons that were in my my family's like personal community circle came to the defense of the faith, and I raised questions they couldn't answer, and I made many really compelling cases, and I know I damaged the faith of many people my own age. Because in my mind, Christianity is just not a defensible position anymore. It's not even not even a position anymore. Like, forget defensible. It's like the mall that got turned into a parking lot and it's just flat. And you remember the mall that was there, and you're like, oh shit. I remember when this place used to be popping, but it's gone. It's not even. It's forget defensible. It's just simply not there. It's a memory. That's my view of Christianity. Like, people are just playing the game because they don't know what else to do, and the simplistic explanations are comforting. It's comforting to say, oh, it's just all Jesus. We don't even need faith, and we don't. Or, I mean, sorry, we don't. All you need is faith. You don't need works. You don't need to think about it. You don't need intellectual stuff. You just need faith. That's all you need, and that's not, like I said, it's not defensible. You know what I mean? And my dad isn't one of those guys either, so I think sometimes I write stuff and I feel it affects him, But at the end of the day, he's built his ego around Christianity and his community, and I think he knows I'm right about a lot of things. I think he's never gonna come around to me talking to demons and things like that, but haven't come out of the closet as bi or anything to him. So, it's kind of funny in that way. But like, one time I did a post about, suffering in the world and how to grapple with that, and that Christianity just almost doesn't care and just doesn't have a good answer for it, which is basically true. And someone came out saying, like, oh, you found out that there's suffering in the world, nothing new really, just, because, the problem of suffering does break a lot of young Christians. And I was just, talking about it. I said, he said he'd been watching my posts with interest. I said, you must not have been, reading them very carefully. You must not have read much because, obviously, you didn't get it. If you think that the problem of suffering broke my faith, you don't get it. You're just spitting back a Christian narrative, and I think that's hilarious, honestly. I think it's hilarious because the problem of suffering. The thing is, I went Hindu, so I went actually opposite. I said, people suffering, fuck them. It doesn't matter. People suffer. Life is suffering, and it's not even a problem that religion needs to solve or philosophy needs to solve in that particular way. It's not, how do we explain suffering so it feels justified. It's a whole different frame. It's not, oh, our sin, because we walked away from God, we experienced suffering. I don't believe that, honestly. I honestly do not believe that. I believe that just being materialized, that you will suffer, and suffering is not a bad thing. It's like growth. It's many things, and furthermore, astral projecting, aliens suffer. They don't suffer as viscerally, as constantly as we do, but they still suffer. So, part of the deal of being in this 3D reality is that we have many experiences compact, and we get to learn about ourselves every day, every minute of every day. So I think that was another thing that was really hilarious, is some of the just stupid things people would say to try and sort of strawman me, and but actually that opens a window for me to just jab right into their heart, twist the blade, and pull out verbally, So, yeah, I enjoy cyberbullying people. First regular Christians, then Rose Christians. Lol. I don't know. Who's next? Maybe no one's next. Maybe maybe now people just take me seriously or something. I feel it's getting that way. The resistance in the world against me particularly, or people like me, such as you, is getting a lot lower. So